Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 476. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. So excited about our next guest is owner and co-founder of a startup biotech, U.S. Specialty Formulations, USSF's protein-based oral vaccine, which is a solution for the global vaccine demand. Welcome, Dr. Kyle Flanagan.
Thank you for having me on the show.
I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your company?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kyle Flanagan. I have a PhD from University of Washington. My bachelor's in science is from Howard University. Shout out for all the Howard people out there. So what does USSF do? We're a startup. We're about 10 years old. We founded in 2013. We have our own products. We make a botanical pain medication. We also do contract formulations for other companies, such as, the large biotech firms and drug manufacturers out there as a subcontractor. And we have, as you mentioned in the startup, the intro, we co-developed a new vaccine or drug delivery platform, which is oral. So rather than having to get a shot or needle-based or inhale something, those are all unpleasant ways to administer a drug. We've developed a platform that allows you to just drink the drug. So you can drink it in a little 10 ml vial, or you can, we're working on the next version of it, which is also a little capsule. So, the future of vaccines, one really promising way to administer vaccines out there that we've developed is through a pill or through a little swish of a liquid, a swish of water. And we call that platform the kinder vaccine because it's a kinder way to administer vaccinations or other medications.
When I think about that, I'm thinking about Pepto-Bismol, magnesium, the taste. How does it taste?
Yes. So we actually conducted a taste and we had many discussions. Should we make it banana flavor? Should we make it strawberry? Should we make, what are the big tastes out there? We found that no one could agree on even a simple strawberry taste. What actually was strawberry? Everyone has different views of that. So we didn't add any kind of flavoring to it. So it actually tastes like nothing, surprisingly. It's an oral suspension, so you would think it might taste a little gravelly or something like that, or, gritty. Nope, nothing. It really feels like maybe a thicker, higher viscosity water, but it has no residual taste. If we get advanced enough, we might have to, for like a child's medication or something like that, we may have to add some sort of flavoring to it. But right now, it really doesn't taste like anything.
So if I hear you correctly, the vaccination is primarily for adults, not for children at this moment?
In the regulatory pathway, the way vaccines are created is you have to look at an age range, which excludes the elderly and young children. And once you've gone through, whatever the requirements are there, then you can proceed to further additional testing and target either, older people or younger people. So the first pathway is just what they call healthy middle-range adults. So, for instance, our clinical trial was people between 15 and I believe it was 65 years old was where our original clinical trial focused on and targeted with really good results. So we'll be publishing some papers on that soon. We've got a poster session next week, which is going to reveal some of those results for the first time.
Talk about getting in the field of biotech. Give us your backstory.
So it's actually pretty interesting. So both my parents are chemists. They're from biotech side of things. So science has always been a thing in my life that I've looked at. I wanted to be a pilot, specifically an astronaut. back in the 70s and the 80s, the way you did that was through the Navy or the Air Force, being a naval pilot. So, wanted to go fly there, earn my chops, and then eventually get brought into the astronaut program. Still would love to go into space. From there, I think around high school, I kind of got pushed more towards the chemistry side and some of the engineering type stuff. So I went to Howard for chemistry, graduated there, went to the University of Washington, and there they had an interesting partnership with NASA and the space program. So my goal ultimately was to work in the semiconductor field, actually. So well versed there, but went into Intel as an intro fellow, finished graduate school, started up working in lithography with Intel and the semiconductor side, and then moved to a couple of different companies, Honeywell, Mallinckrodt Baker, and then had an opportunity to leave and start up U.S. Specialty Formulations. But through that career, there was the science, earned my science chops, started working on more of the science business interface, focused more on program development and the business aspects of doing expensive things like research and R&D and product development, and learning all the pieces that have to go into commercializing things. And from there, that gave me the confidence to open up and start U.S. Specialty Formulations when the opportunity presented itself. And really, the biotech side actually is interesting. So that came from some work I did with Battelle back during my graduate career. And what I noticed was there are similar things in the biotech space and the semiconductor space. And what you're working on doesn't necessarily mean that you can't work on the other thing. What you have to develop is a framework for how you think and how you relate to problems that are presented from whatever project or program you're working on. So it's really more of a method for how you think and how you go about answering, solving, and doing the paper research or the actual physical research on something to answer a specific problem or achieve a given goal. And that, when you have that down, that gives you the confidence to say, okay, I know what I'm doing. I can start my business. I can do better than those other companies that are maybe bogged down by bureaucracies or other things like that. And a lot of companies, and one of the joys we have with this company is we've made a vow, and we're pretty good at it, is not creating a bunch of bureaucracy when it's not required. And that allows us to move faster than a lot of our, we'll say, larger competitors out there that do similar things, but not exactly.
Talk about raising capital to start your company.
That is horribly challenging. It's challenging, to be frank, it's challenging for any entrepreneur. Being Black and trying to ask someone for money is even more challenging. Sometimes even our own people don't trust us. So it's just challenging all around. So we were able to raise, I think we pulled the trigger at $100,000. So we have friends, and I'll call it friends and family, mostly friends, who were able to put a little bit of money in. We were able to snowball that with a couple of the smaller biotech incubators and combine funds from there. And really, we started the company on $200,000 about. That was when we pulled the trigger and said, we're going to do this. We bought some Terra Universal clean room kits, and we hand built those ourselves in our own room. So, a couple of scientists doing construction is always a funny endeavor, but we did it. We got our clean room certified. I would say the most biotech companies are starting up on hundreds of millions of dollars. And those in the industry who know us and those who know our background story have looked at what we're in now. We're in a 41,000 square foot building. We've got 5 clean room suites. We've come a long way from where we were before. There's still a longer way to go, but, I think people who know biotech, who know specialty formulations, and who know this sort of industry look at what we've done, and they are impressed. They are thoroughly amazed by what we've been able to accomplish for a fraction of what most people who are in this and started up have done. But raising capital is a challenge. It continues to be a challenge. One of the things, I think there's a company out there that they sell water. They literally bottle water and sell it. And they were able to raise $67 million. during COVID, there were many companies out there that had some interesting capabilities, made lots of promises. They were able to raise hundreds, $400 to $500 million. We had a platform, a candidate with data that was ready to go. We have manufacturing capability. We had that. We were unable to raise any money to get this done. So, I think a lot of the challenge with fundraising and what we've come to learn, my co-founder and I, is the technology has almost nothing to do with the fundraising. It's like 5%. The rest of it is all about the investors being comfortable with you. And by comfortable, there's, being bros, but there's also, do they feel intimidated by it? Do they feel like they don't understand enough to actually tell whether you're being honest or disingenuous or anything? Or are they used to dealing with people who make fantastical claims so that when they finally do meet genuine people, which I believe most entrepreneurs are because of the nature of what we do, that they're unable to, they just don't know how to deal with those kinds of genuine people. So that they don't know how to move forward because you're not making wild, outlandish claims. So it's really we still struggle with it. I'm still looking for investors if anyone's out there. And we're looking, there are a lot of different factors that go into convincing someone to give you, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And there's lots of people out there, but there's only a limited amount of time. So it can be very challenging to raise money, continuing to, write presentations for people and make it into digestible content. If you remember, most society, most people nowadays have 5 to 10 minutes and they've made their decision. So you kind of have to wow people in those first 5 to 10 minutes. But these are extremely technical, they're extremely technical details when you talk about vaccine development. And it's hard to really get into the meat of things in such a limited period of time. So challenging is the best word I can describe to do it. It's the best word I can have to describe the fundraising process.
If an investor is listening, how should they contact you?
Great. You can contact us through info@ussfgmp.com. If it's specific to Kinder, you can contact us through info@Kinder. And it's Kinder, a slightly special way we have it spelling it. It sounds like KINDR, but it's actually QYNDR. QYNDR for Kinder.com. But info@ussfgmp.com is the best way to do it. And we love to talk. We've got data. We love to share. This is really amazing science because when you think about what this vaccine does, it allows people who live away from, we'll say, highly advanced, we'll say urban centers and things like that to receive medications. You could drone drop this, right? It's these things, this vaccine platform makes a vaccine stable at high temperatures, at low temperatures. It allows you to transport the vaccine to where people need it without needing a medical practitioner to administer it. It doesn't require needles. All you have to do is drink it from a plastic cup or a little administration cup. So, the cost of ownership for someone trying to distribute this is very low, but it enables people across the globe who otherwise would have to travel tens, or in some cases, even in the United States, 3 or 4 hours to get to a clinic. It enables them to receive medications that they otherwise would have extreme difficulty getting a hold of.
And when we think about vaccinations and what we went through in terms of COVID, and specifically African Americans not getting involved in a lot of clinical trials, just talk about that in terms of any resistance you've had or any information you want to share to individuals that are possibly hesitant.
Right. So I think, if you look historically at the African American population, we've been experimented on by the government without our knowledge. It's one thing to experiment on someone if they give you your consent. It's one thing to not have consent given and for some of the things that were done to be propagated and really not punished for. So there's a lot of hesitance there for in the African American population to try new things, especially when it comes to vaccines and things like that. We ran this clinical trial in New Zealand. And what's interesting about New Zealand is it has a very strong Maori population, which would be equivalent Native American or native population. And the Maori, the way New Zealand did this was we had to get buy-in from a Maori council in order to run the clinical trial. And we wanted to make sure when we set the clinical trial up that we included people. And as we go forward, this is very core to the way we set up our trials. Because it's oral, it goes into your stomach and from an digestive system. And so it can be influenced by the types of food that you eat. We're very keen on wanting to try as many different ethnicities, populations as we possibly can to ensure that the foods that people eat, the types of foods that people eat, the different cultures, we have the same effect. Or if there's an enhanced effect, we could pick it up and say maybe figure out how to further enhance it. So that's on our side of it. I think some of the hesitancy in the community resulted from all the stories that the misinformation that was out there and that was allowed to continue to be propagated and not shut down. But also some of the experiences from the mRNA side of the vaccines caused and still continues to cause some hesitation. There's some information out there that says because of some of the experiences people had with the vaccines developed around COVID, that vaccination rates across the United States are plummeting because people had such negative experiences with them. And what we're trying to do with our Kinder platform is reverse that trend. During the clinical trial, we didn't have negative influences, and we wouldn't expect there to be negative experiences. We wouldn't expect there to be, again, because it is very close to being a food. It really is a food. So we think this is a way, and the platform allows, we'll say, the community, but also just higher level governments and things like that to improve their vaccination rates, because you just don't have these negative influences or negative experiences from the vaccine that seem to have cropped up around the COVID time. And we want to reverse this hesitancy, definitely in the Black community, for not getting vaccines. Vaccines are very important, and they provide longevity, improved life, and all around better health. And better, when you have the better health, that leads to, when your health is better, it leads to your ability to learn. It leads to your ability to focus on the job. There's lots of benefits from just having just a core better health and not worrying about, disease.
There are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or business that's dominating that you admire and why.
I can't remember the name of, again, the business or the product that they sell, but I alluded to it earlier. This company that was able to raise $67 million on selling water to people. That's amazing. That is that's going to go down in marketing textbooks forever, because we've all heard the ability to sell refrigerators to people who live in very cold places. This is one of those. You have people paying lots of money for a can of water, and you were able to get investors to give you money to can water and sell it to people. That is amazing. And I do admire that. Now, from the other side, I mentioned drones. I love aviation. It's one of the things that I do. And the ability to the companies that are focused on making drugs accessible and healthcare accessible through drone drops or through remote deliveries to places that otherwise have to wait for a larger aircraft to come in. I admire them for the dedication and for the challenges, for overcoming the challenges associated with that. Aviation is heavily regulated. Pharmaceuticals are heavily regulated. So putting the two together and allowing you to deliver medicines to healthcare professionals, in remote areas, that's some serious dedication and teamwork. And I think those are great endeavors.
Well, I want you to have a monologue. I want you to name this person, living or not. This person has inspired you so much. Who is that person and what are you saying to that person?
That's a tough one. I know this sounds weird, but I will go back to, I think it would be, I've said this before, I've had to think about it a little bit, but I'll go back to my mother. My mother's a chemist. She was, grew up in Gainesville, Georgia, went to school at Howard. She is very outspoken. She is, from a very early age, always talked about, you have to learn, when I didn't want to do something or didn't think it was necessary, she always mentioned, Kyle, you have to learn to play the game. And the game, it was always this thing that play the game. The game is do what you have to do. You know that your essay needs to be perfect. Your understanding of this has to be spot on and better than other people. So as an example, I think we're writing a paper on, I want to say a 5 or 6 page paper. There were tears. There was a little bit of yelling. There was having to rewrite that paper, I think about 7 times until it was perfect. And she's very smart. She grew up in troubling times. So there's a lot of, she's seen some horrible things. And she was able to not necessarily transmit that fear to us, but get us to see and understand certain things that we have to do. And I think that's translated into everything that I do. It's translated into everything that, as I try to explain things to my daughters, what they have to do and where they are in the world, whether they think they should do something or not, they too have to play the game. And the game is you have to be at the top of your, whatever you choose to do, you need to be at the top or near the top, if not the top, so that you have the opportunity to do things that others are by default given the opportunity to do. You've got to fight for your spot at the table. And this is something my mother drilled into us. I think she's still trying to drill it. I think I'm 53 and she's still trying to drill it into me. So she hasn't given up. I think it's something that is so ingrained, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge for parents to deliver that. So in my life, she's the one really, and my dad too. I don't want to leave him out, but really it's my mom who kind of forced these things and drove them home.
Speaking of fatherhood, talk about fatherhood and entrepreneurship.
It's interesting in a good way. I'm told that when I use interesting that way, it could sound negative, but no, it's really positive for me. So when I worked for other companies, it was similar to, again, I go back to my parents. My parents worked for, pharmaceutical companies or various other companies, right? So the idea was you grow up, you become a scientist, you get to work on big, expensive, fancy things, but you're going to work for a company. When I struck off on my own, that's very stressful, exceedingly stressful. Both my children do gymnastics, so that's expensive. They're more expensive things, but it is expensive. I'm a pilot. I like to fly airplanes. So all those things were kind of, okay, we won't go flying because it costs a lot of money. But we kept the gymnastics going. It was a decision. What my children saw, I think in their youngest days, they saw Dad, when I worked for Mallinckrodt Baker and Honeywell, they saw me traveling around the world. I would leave, I'd come back in 2 to 3 weeks, then I'd leave again. And so they're always, Dad, it was mostly Mom. They didn't really see Dad all that much. I think in one case, even when they saw me, there's an example, my parents were visiting and our oldest daughter she had gotten a hold of my cell phone and was walking around the house talking on a phone. And Pop asked her, who are you talking to? And she said, shh, I'm having a conference call with Santa Claus. We have to discuss the objectives. And my dad looked at me and said, perhaps you're working a bit much. He's from pharmaceuticals too. So it was a similar kind of thing. So I would say now they look at that and what they see is I can go to gymnastics meets whenever I want to. If it's a big meet, I can go. If it's something important, I can go pick them up from school. I can do lots of things And in their minds, they see that they don't have to work for other people. They can work for themselves. It's not that it's easier work, but they have the ability to focus, and they'll ask me about different products that we have or why we're doing that, or they hear my wife and I talking about different things at work that we have to deal with. So they hear those conversations, and I think they're internalizing that, yeah, they can work with other people, but to them, their horizons now expand beyond just working for another company. And I think that's an important thing to deliver to their thought process, is they can travel the world, work from wherever, depending on the job, but they don't have to work for someone else. They can be working independently, and they know that they see that they can start their own business. And I think that's important. It does give me a lot more time to chat with.
Talk about mental wellness and entrepreneurship.
Right. That is very important. Early on, you want to do things. So as an entrepreneur, once you've made that decision or that thought process, right, is you're probably a person that does things. So you've got things that have to be accomplished. And in doing that, as your company grows, there's more things that have to be accomplished. So there's always something that needs to be done. So you'll never be done. Everyone always says, well, when I have time, I'll do this. There is no time. The list is always long, and there's always lots of stuff to do. There's always an emergency. In manufacturing, there's always something that is prohibiting your ability to manufacture, which is, in manufacturing or development, that's how you get paid. So there's always something to be done. And I think if you allow it, you can mistake solving those problems and the euphoria that you can get from solving those problems as fun. It is kind of fun, but at the same time, you have got to take, and actually one of my customers said this to me, and he'd been in business for 50 years. And he said, hey, Kyle, you need to take time off for yourself. And I kind of didn't listen to him at first. And then I realized, actually, I went on a couple of long gymnastics trips, and I felt so much better after just not being in the office at my desk or in the facility, walking around handling things. I realized, hey, he's got a point. I need to actually just step away from this periodically, because going all the time is, focused on one thing. While you meet objectives, you don't necessarily, it builds up a lot of stress, and you forget that there's another way to feel. So it's important to look after the mental health, either by taking breaks. And if you're running or entrepreneur, or, you're managing lots of people, those breaks are more frequent than you realize. You need them. They're very important. Whether it's just taking a day, not a Saturday or Sunday, but just a day in the middle of the week and running off, or saying, my co-founder and I have discussed a thing where we take 2 weeks, and then, we're in working 2 weeks, and then we take a 3-day break every third week or something like that. We haven't been able to actually make it work. That's our goal. Or just a long vacation, once a quarter, to just focus your mind. I think from the in 2000s and early 2000s, people would refer to the boondoggle trips and business meetings and things like that. Those can serve as definitely a way to, yes, you're still doing work, but you're also not at your desk, and you're able to kind of let your mind roam and chew on problems without constantly being in front of another problem. And another thing is, for mental health, I find this is learning to delegate. So as your company grows, you're in control, but you are not responsible for everything. You have people who are responsible for things. So you help guide those people, teach those people, and that allows you to focus on the big picture and other things. And this is related to mental health, because by doing that, you are not worried about the minutia and necessarily all the details about getting a specific thing accomplished. You have people for that. And if you train and trust your people, your mental health will be better, because you can now focus on the growth, the meeting and acquiring new customers, doing the kinds of transactions that only the CEO of a company can do, because you are confident that your people are taking care of the day-to-day activities. And so that actually factors into that mental health. Since we've grown and gotten more people, and I don't have to worry about certain things, my co-founder doesn't have to worry about certain things, it's gotten a lot easier to deal with the other things that we do have to worry about. Kind of a holistic view.
Advice you wish you had followed?
The one that you hear from entrepreneurs is a lot of is take care of yourself. And from people who've been doing this for a while. And I didn't understand that and didn't believe it. I was like, put the business first. It's my baby. We got to make sure this is working. But no, it goes back to take care of yourself. It's like, when you're flying on a commercial liner and they say if the oxygen masks come down, and you're traveling with a minor, put on your oxygen mask first, then to attend to the person that you're accompanying. That is very true in the business. If you as a co-founder or founder or a leader in the business, especially in a startup, if you are not healthy mentally or physically, your business will suffer. So it's important to for me, I didn't listen to that. And so things were just getting more and more tense and just getting more and more challenging. But if I'd listened to that, I would have said, all right, you need to back off, maybe take a couple of days, go flying, right? That always makes me feel better. And just do that more periodically, kind of either a system or a schedule or something, however you set it up. But if I had done that, I think the experiences would have been a little more pleasant than just trying to push through everything and not take time out for myself or just take care of myself first.
Talk about your top 2 mentors, influencers, business advisors. What advice did they give you?
I would say Nick, one of my customers, or one of our very first customers, and he gave the take time for yourself advice, but he also pointed out that he said one of the big things that you have to do is when you're in this business is remember you're fully capable. You know what you're doing. You know your business. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be in business. So don't trust yourself and set your objectives and goals and the way you deal with the customers. Don't let the customers influence you and dictate how you should run your business. So, he's very firm in stick to your guns. You know what you're doing. You've been doing this for a while. Don't let your customers push you around and don't let the big guys push you around. You guys know what you're doing. And I think that was a big, he would sit and have lunch with us whenever we had to come to discuss whatever details. And so that was one of the big pieces he gave us, that and the take care of yourself kind of thing. I wouldn't call it a mentor. I haven't had too many of those just because of the nature of what we're always doing. But I do listen to the people who are in the general manager positions in very large companies and things like that. And there was an individual at Air Products I was doing some consulting work for. And on one of these, I sat in his office and I was he was describing what he wanted. I was trying to figure out how to get it into the format that he was looking for, to really understand there's a question that he was asking, and I was trying to figure out how to actually get to what he was trying to figure out and just talking to him. And at that time, I wasn't, we weren't as advanced down the line as we are now. And so he had said to me, you'll know you're ready when you've got to make a decision, and it's not every decision that you have to make from that point on is no longer black and white. So I didn't quite understand what he was thinking because what he was saying, because I was still in science mode, still in startup mode, still in still in the do. And later on, probably about 2 years ago, I was thinking, and I was going over some reports, and I realized I now understand what he was talking about. You reach a point in the business where you've matured enough that there isn't, most likely every decision is not just cut and dry. You're having to think 3 decisions out. And he was trying to get me to think that, but I wasn't quite ready for it yet. But you're having to think 3 decisions out, and some of those decisions span years, right? USF is a 10-year-old company. Some of the things we're dealing with now my co-founder and I had made a decision to do that 4 years ago. we we made the right decision, and now it's, we had set it up to do things that we're doing now, but we actually had to go down that path 4 years ago. So I think that was I think back to some of those discussions I've had with the leaders of companies, the previous companies I worked for, and a lot of it is about decision making and how it affects not just you, but the people and the company, and how those decisions are very wide ranging. It's kind of another level of thinking that would probably hit a couple of years ago. But I think the mentors, from just watching how they ran their businesses and interacted with either me or their reports, influenced a lot of how we do things here. And we've taken the better parts of those things and kind of melded them into the USF culture.
Kyle, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I'd like you to ask the question and answer it.
You're asking rough questions. Actually, it's a very simple question. Are you still having fun? My general thoughts, and I arrived at this many years ago, is if you don't like something, change it. So from that, I would say at the beginning of the I would say from when we started this, Gary and I, my co-founder, we like building things. We like putting things together. We like assembling teams, going to the lab, as you see these big reactors behind me, not the lab, but the facility. That's fun. Creating stuff is fun. Mixing things together and putting them in vials and bottles, that can be fun. Designing a new formulation, that's fun. You put all the business stuff onto it. You put a team in. You now have direct reports. You have individual personalities you have to deal with, and trying to get people to work together, establishing goals, all that business stuff, regulators, bankers, finance people. Is it still fun? And I would say, yes, this is still fun. Your earlier question, trying to raise money, funds, we're in the middle of a giant expansion. How do you pay for that? Is that still fun? Yeah, it is. It is. So I would say, I think this is still fun. And when it becomes not fun, then we need to say, okay, what changed and how do we get back to it? Or do I just need to go off and do something else? But, right now this is still awesome. And it's great.
And for our listening audience, I didn't want to leave them with the cliffhanger. If I'm not mistaken, the company that you referenced earlier was Liquid Death Water.
Ah, got it. Yes, that's it.
Okay.
$67 million for. Yeah. So right. If anyone would like to, we are in the middle of an investment round. So for investors out there, if you'd like to have an impact on humanity significantly, improve vaccination and just general health of people, you can do more than, we'll say, invest in just bottling water and have an impact with U.S. specialty formulations on helping us effectively save lives and prevent illness and disease. We're happy to have discussions. So I just threw that out there.
Oh, that's fine. We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Rapid Round of Fun. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the rapid round of fun?
Sure.
Your ideal comfort food?
Pizza.
The last movie you saw?
I think it's called The Airbender. The Last Airbender, that's it.
You relax doing what?
Flying and gaming.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Pass.
Your favorite dance song?
Go, Go, Go by the 49ers.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Wings. Hot wings.
Hot wings. Thank you for that. Work out or hit the couch?
Workout.
Dr. Kyle Flanagan, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you, to do business with you. Leave all your social media handles, and thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. It's been great. Thank you for having me, Dr. Richards. The best way to contact me is Kyle, Kyle.Flanagan, Flanigan at ussfgmp.com. I'm on LinkedIn. If you just look up Dr. Kyle Flanagan or Kyle Flanagan on LinkedIn, I'm there. And our website, if you want a little bit more information, is www.ussfgmp.com.
Thank you, Dr. Kyle Flanagan. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.